On to our next session now, ladies and gentlemen, and we're going to welcome onto the screen Aileen Ho from Allianz Health Partners, who's going to interview Gerry Hussey. Gerry is a performance psychologist, and they're going to focus on how to find focus and also flow in an always-on environment. Over to you guys, and welcome.
Thanks, Emma, and thanks for joining us today, Gerry. Really good to see you again. When we last spoke, you made a comment about the mind-body connection, and interestingly, this was brought up again in an earlier segment about doom scrolling. Could you tell us a bit more about your research and your thoughts on that mind-body link?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Firstly, and thank you, or good afternoon, depending where you are, and thanks for having me on. Over the last 20, almost 30 years now, I've been fascinated as a psychologist between the mind-body connection. And the more research we do on this, the more we look at the neuroplasticity of the brain, the more we look at the neurochemicals of the brain, the more we look at the central nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system or the parasympathetic nervous system, the more we look at the role of the function of the microbiome, it is abundantly clear now that your thoughts and emotions are constantly changing your chemistry and biology. And not only that, by thought and thought alone, we can upgrade our immune system and we can change the expression of our genes and our cells. Now, when I was saying that 20 years ago, people thought I was some type of nut, but the science has finally caught up. But at a very simple level, if we're to think about this, and this 20 years ago, this simple analogy helped me get to a point from abundant skeptic to, okay, let's be curious about this. If anybody on this call thinks about the last time you got sad, I mean, very sad. We know sadness begins as a thought. And what is a thought? A thought is an electrical signal that's sent into the brain. It fires a neurochemistry. So the signal is either beautiful or fearful or sad. And that sends a signal into the nervous system, a signal both electrical and chemical. And that's what an emotion is. An emotion is chemical and electrical signals being sent into the nervous system. So we have a thought. The thought fires that neurocircuitry in the brain. Then we have chemicals based on that thought into the nervous system. And then that adapts the body to respond to that signal. So we have a thought that's sad. Then we get sad, we feel the emotion, and the emotion is the chemical changes happening in the body. And then we start to produce tears. Now, in order for us to produce physical tears, a lot of physical and physiological systems have to kick into place. Or when we get embarrassed, our cheeks go red. So that is a very simple way of explaining, and we all know that an emotion can cause a physical change in the body. But we have to now realize that every single emotion, from anger, judgment, cynicism, criticism, or gratitude, every emotion changes the physiology and the biology and the chemistry of the body. And what we know is when we shift our attention and when we shift our thoughts, we can change our emotion. We can change both the biology and our chemistry. So this idea that the mind and body are somehow connected, we need to even move beyond all of that. The mind and the body are the same thing. And when you move the body and you change the body, you change the mind. That is the power of exercise. And we know how exercise releases endorphins. It creates a new biology. It shakes up our physiology. So when you move your body, you move your mind. But now we also know that when we change our mindset, when we change what we think about, when we meditate, when we use visualization, we can actually change our chemistry and biology. And through a thing we know now as epigenetics, we actually get to change the expression of our genes by thought and thought alone, which is incredible.
Thanks, Gerry. That's such an important thing to take away, actually, just to think about. When you think about wellness, it's not really just about the physical self, it's also about your mental self as well. But with so much going on with all of us, if you're a parent, you've got your kids, you've got work, you've got the day-to-day things you've got to take care of. All that stuff's going through our minds all the time. How do we make sure that we're controlling all that talk in our head all the time?
Yeah, and for me, I'm a business owner. I'm trying to run a business. I have 2 young kids in the house, so I get it. There's lots going on. But when we talk about everything that's going on in the world, the age-old cliche is control the controllables. We know we spend a lot of time and energy, mentally and physically, worrying about stuff that we can't control. And for me, that's like a rocking chair. Worrying about something you can't control gives you something to do, but gets you nowhere. So you can rock all day on a rocking chair, you can expend a lot of energy, but you're not going anywhere. Hasn't you moved forward. And after all that worry, you're still in the same place. So what I've learned in my life is I don't worry about the stuff I can't control. So there's 3 levels. There's the uncontrollables, and then the stuff I can influence. So I can influence people through my work, through my thoughts, my actions. If I walk into a shop, if I'm a little bit kinder, if I look that person in the eyes, if I say please and thank you, well, I can influence the type of day that they're having. I can't control it, but I can influence people. And the last, so you have uncontrollables, you have influence, and then you have what can I actually control? So I make sure that at least 90% of my time, my energy, my thoughts are going into the things that I have control over. Now, when we say that to people, control the things you can control, people initially start thinking about the things outside of themselves that they can control. But the first thing that you can control is you. Now we know that you control your central nervous system. We think that our central nervous system is responding to things on the outside, but it can't see the outside world. Your eyes are just sending signals to the brain. Your brain then has to process the signal and make sense of it. So think of this. Think of Lewis Hamilton sits into a Formula One car today. Somewhere today he is testing a Formula One car. And he's taking that car around at 215 miles an hour. And because it's testing and because it's a Wednesday and he's not in a Formula One and he's probably in a good mood, he's going around there 215 miles an hour. His eyes can see it. Of course he can see it. But he's probably thinking about his lunch, or he's talking to an engineer, or maybe he's doing a practice lap. So maybe he's only at 180 miles an hour and he's having a bit of fun because Lewis is a fun-loving guy. Or maybe he's singing a song because we know he loves music. Now, if you took me and you put me into the same car and I had to drive at 180 miles an hour, which to Lewis is very slow, I would be racked with fear and anger. My hands would be sweating, my heart would be racing, and I'd be probably in the ditch. So the eyes take in the exact same thing. But what do we think about what they take in? How do we frame it? What's the perspective we have in it? Are we familiar with it? Are we afraid of it? So the eyes can only take in what's happening in the outside world. But how we feel about what's happening in the world largely comes down to the way I think about it, the way I feel about it, the way I can reframe it. And when I grew up, I had a lot of anxiety, and that's what makes me so passionate about this work. And I realized that I could be in the most happy, calm environment in the world, but I would still be very anxious. So I kind of realized that my body was responding not to what was on the outside world, because the outside world was calm. I grew up on a farm. I could sit in a field and there was nothing around, only birds and animals, and I'd be highly anxious. So I realized from a young age that how I felt, my central nervous system, my gene expression, my chemical expression, wasn't actually responding to the outside world. It was responding to me, my thoughts, my emotions, and my interpretation of the outside world. Now that is a massive place to get to. Because now we get to a point where I realize that even if I can feel anxious in a calm world, well, is it possible to flip that? Can I be calm in an anxious world? Can I be loving in an angry world? And the answer is yes. And if anyone's ever read that incredible book, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, Frankl says, and he was a concentration camp victim who had every right to be racked in anger and judgment and bitterness. But he realizes that very often we have the right to be angry and we have the right to be bitter, but we also have a freedom. And the freedom is to let them things go. Because if we hold on to anger, if we hold on to judgment, it is changing our biology, it is changing our chemistry, it is changing our genetic destiny, and it's hurting ourselves. So Frankl said, we all, in our world of adversity and different things happening to us, and some are right and some are wrong, some are expected, some are not expected. But ultimately, we are either defined by everything outside of us, or we are defined by what's inside of us. And that is our freedom. And he said, between stimulus and response, there is a gap. There is a space. And in that space is our ability to grow, and our ability to be at peace. And I think that is a phenomenal. So what you can control is you, your thoughts, your emotions, your actions, the food you eat, the words you use, the things you say, the things you listen to. And when you start to control all of those things, you start to change your inner world. And when your inner world becomes a world of more peace, more joy, more love, more certainty, more gratitude, suddenly the outside world seems different. Because we know when we change the things, when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change.
Makes so much sense. Very wise words. I wonder though, with most of us and programmed with the way we think about things now, how do we start getting into being more self-aware about these thoughts that go through our heads? Do you have any tips around how do we take those baby steps to be getting there towards a more quiet kind of chatter in the brain?
Yeah, most of us are brought up to learn about, if I ask people what house does the American president live in, we'd probably know. If I ask people, the capital of England, we'd all probably know. So we're brought up and we're trained to look outward, and we're told that success, happiness, and everything that is important is outside of us. So we learn huge amounts of information about things outside of us. But if I was to ask people on this call to describe your microbiome, or to draw a synaptic connection, or to name 5 neurochemicals, or to show me where your adrenal glands are, or your pineal gland, or to describe the blood-brain barrier. All of these things are essential to health and happiness, but most people know nothing about them. So the first thing I would say is stop looking outward. Happiness and success is not outward, it's inward. We know that. So we have to go inward every day. We have to meet ourselves every day. And that can be it doesn't have to be taking 2 hours, because sometimes we haven't 2 hours. But 1% of your time is 15 minutes. And if you can still give away 99% of your time, it means that every day you take 15 minutes to start your day, because this is where it has to happen, at the beginning of your day. So we know that 5 deep breaths will take us out of sympathetic nervous system, and sympathetic nervous system is your fight or flight. It's increased adrenaline, increased cortisol, increased heart rate, increased blood pressure. And that's okay for a short period of time where we have to fight a bear, we have to pull an all-nighter, we have to do something. But we can't survive long-term in that mode. So when we take 5 deep breaths, we're switching off the sympathetic nervous system and we're switching on the parasympathetic nervous system. Only when we're in the parasympathetic nervous system does your cells rebuild, does your immune system switch on, and does your digestive processes take place. But most of us, because of phone, work, emails, we're living in a constant sympathetic dominant state. We're not spending enough time in the parasympathetic, and our body is breaking down. So 15 minutes a day to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, to go switch off from the outside world and to go inward. And then if we begin to use that breathing, we could use a very simple process like visualization. We know the brain is a construct. There's billions of tiny little wires. Each wire is called a neuron. And when I think of something, or when I go to do something, it probably, even to stand up, probably takes 1 million little neurons. Your knees, your glutes, your hamstrings, your waist, your depth perception, spatial awareness are all. So every little thought, every action fires a number of these neurons. And every time I say that thing or do that thing, those neurons actually get wired together. So you're creating a pathway now, like a string of lights. But the brain doesn't really know whether we're thinking about something or actually doing it. So when we visualize ourselves doing something, we can now build the same brain patterns as if we're happening. So if you want to learn the piano, we know you can greatly speed up how quickly you become good at the piano if you start to visualize yourself playing every day. And you're tricking the brain, because not only are you building those pathways in the brain, but the brain believes it's happening. So it believes you're having an amazing conversation, that you're playing a piano. It believes you're after getting the job. So it starts to feel happy. So now you're changing the chemistry of the body. So the body is now in an elevated state of love, joy, peace, gratitude, as if it's already happened. And long before the success arrives, or long before the event happens, you can feel the emotions of it as if it's already happened. So in the morning, using your breath, using visualization. We can talk about meditation later if you want. And the last piece is exercise. We know the scientific impacts of exercise. One of the simple things exercise has done, it releases a thing called neurocannabinoids. Now, even the word cannabinoids, we have an idea, cannabis, God, that sounds like it should be good. It is good. It's an amazing drug. The other thing it releases is endorphins. Now, endorphin is endogenous morphine. Now, people are saying, hold on a second here. Cannabis and morphine in my brain. Yes. And you have the power to release them anytime you want through thought and thought alone. Who wouldn't want to be the cannabis in the morning? But this is healthy, positive. This is your ability to fire the most beautiful chemicals into your body. So when we exercise, we're releasing endogenous morphine, which is our bliss hormone. We're opening up the pineal gland, which floods the brain in a sense of coherence and flow state. Exercise is not just for the body. It is for the entire mind. It is for the brain. It produces a thing called BDNF, which is a super sauce that helps the brain to renew itself. So in the morning for 15 minutes, I get up. I might be boxing because I love boxing. I might be boxing. I'd have nice music on. I'm practicing my breath. And I can kind of put all those three things into a 15-minute workout. But it's a mind-body workout. It's a gratitude workout. I say positive things about myself. As I throw a punch, I'm saying joy, peace, love. And I'm firing those neurochemicals in the body because the brain thinks I'm in a place of joy and love. And when you wake up in the morning, before you go on your phone, before you start your day, before you pick up your children, before you do anything else, if you can regulate yourself, if you can get yourself into a place of peace and joy and love, where you slow time down, you put your brain into a flow state, that is the rudder of the day. If you can win the first 15 minutes, the chances of your day going well after that are dramatically increased. If you lose the first 15 minutes and you start your day on the back foot, you're never really going to catch it.
Makes so much sense. I'm wondering also, with this change that will happen within yourself, do you think that will actually impact the relationships that you have around you as well?
I think so. I mean, we are built for love, and we live in a world where the human body can only work from one or two emotions, but it can only work from one emotion at a time. So you are either operating from a place of love, which is parasympathetic nervous state, you're flooded in a chemical called oxytocin, and you want human contact. You're kind, you're patient, you can listen. Or if you're not coming from a place of love, you're operating from a place of fear. And fear is sympathetic state. And now you're flooded in the chemistry of adrenaline and cortisol, and you become impatient and angry. And I don't want anybody, and everybody else can go to hell with themselves. So simply by being in a parasympathetic state starts to flood you in oxytocin. And if we haven't heard of oxytocin, it's known as the snuggle hormone. It is our hormone that builds us for connection. When we feel loved, when we feel valued, when we feel respected, when you hug somebody you love, or when somebody looks into your eyes and says, I love you, they're actually changing the chemistry of your brain, because your brain is now releasing oxytocin. It has no interest in cortisol. And we become more kind, more loving, more caring, more patient. Changing your chemistry is one of the quickest and fastest way you can build healthy, happy relationships.
I'm definitely going to take that time in the morning just to reset myself before the day starts, that's for sure. So I guess last tips, Gerry. Lots of really good information shared today. If the audience had to take away just 3 key things they should change in their days right now, that first thing around, taking time in the morning for yourself, can you think of 2 other things that they should try doing throughout the day as well, just to keep a quiet mind?
Absolutely. I think look at the relationship you have with yourself. Listen to the way you speak to yourself. The one person, you can go to a psychologist once a week, you can work with a strength and conditioning coach 10 times a week, you can work, but you are present with yourself 24/7. If you find it hard to be by yourself, that is a huge awakening. If you find it hard to sit in a room without a phone, without a distraction, without music, that is a huge message. Your relationship with yourself is the single most important contributor to your health, your happiness, and your success. If you are running away from yourself, you cannot outrun the things in your head, and you cannot outrun the things in your heart. Self-compassion is the ultimate green juice. Love is the ultimate superfood. That is when we thrive. But we can't love others if we can't love ourselves. So when you look in the mirror, do you see someone you're proud of? Do you see someone you love? Do you see someone that inspires you? If I was to listen to all the things you said to yourself every single day, are they kind? Are they compassionate? Are they loving? Do you see the miracle of the universe when you look in the mirror? Or do you sometimes speak to yourself in a way that is unfair and untrue? Do you sometimes say things to yourself that you wouldn't say to a child? You have to work on the relationship you have with yourself. There is not enough mountains in the world for someone that is trying to run away from themselves. There is not enough marathons you can do. Coming home to yourself, learning to accept and love yourself exactly as you are, being at peace with all that you are and all that you're not. Stop judging yourself. Stop comparing yourself to other people. And every morning look in the mirror and find the one thing about yourself that you can love. And say, am I incredible? Am I amazing? You matter. Your dreams matter. You have the ability to change the world. Your life is 900 months. We sleep 300. Roughly, we have 600 months on this planet. And for me, half of those are gone. I've less than 300 months. What am I waiting for? So who are you waiting for? Life is happening now. You are a miracle. You defy science. You have a soul, you have biology, you have chemistry. And when you align those three things and you start to live from a place of love, where you don't compare yourself to other people, you're not trying to fit into other people's expectations, and you stand up on your own 2 feet and you live life on your terms, that is a hell of a place to be. And it is a place that we all can get to.
Such inspiring words, Gerry. Thanks so much for lifting all of us up today. Really good to speak with you.
Anytime. And if anybody wants to check out what we do, we give away a lot for free on soulspace.ie. I'm a psychologist in psychology. Psychology is the study of, and psyche is the soul. We think a psychologist should study brain science and chemistry, and we do, and I've become pretty good at that. But that's just the biology. Psychology is the study of the psyche, and a good psychologist is fascinated with the soul. And the soul is your inner spark of light. It is you, what makes you come alive. So if anyone is interested, we're on soulspace.ie, and you can check out. We give away a lot of information and courses for free, because my mission is to share this knowledge and understanding with the world. So thank you for having me on.
Gerry, thank you. That was amazing. Thank you so much, Aileen. Thank you so much. That's great questions.